I'd like to call today's meeting of Public Service Subcommittee to order. Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Alexander, Dixie, Eldridge, Johnson, Kiesling, Powers, Rudder. Lady Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam, who are you? I'm Madam
you.
Chairman. It's been a long day. Oh, my word. Madam Secretary, thank you. Do we have any personal orders from any of our members today? Okay, well, oh, yes, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're honored to have Representative Powell's daughter with us today. Would you please stand up?
We're going to take item number 5 out of order. Representative Bolso has another committee meeting he needs to get to. So Representative Bolso, we're going to hear you on item number 5, which is House Bill 1828. Do I have we have a motion? Do I have a second? Have a motion and a second, and I understand you have an amendment on this bill, drafting code 011965. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do.
Do we have a motion and a second on this amendment? The amendment makes the bill, I understand, so let's go ahead and put the amendment on the bill. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, signify by saying no. The amendment is on the bill. Representative, you're recognized for your explanation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. This is a bill that adds to our list of symbols in our Tennessee Blue Book. We've got all different kinds of symbols in our Blue Book right now, obviously, but we do not have any books. And what this bill does is it inaugurates these 10 books that are listed in the bill as the official books of the state of Tennessee. Reading obviously is important, not just to children, but to adults. And the books that we have here really show the richness of Tennessee's cultural and political history. As all of you know, Tennessee became a state on June 1 of 1796. So the first book that we have listed is George Washington's farewell address, which he delivered in 1796, in September of 1796, where he noted, among other things, that religion and morality are, quote, the indispensable supports of our political prosperity. And from there, we've added other texts that demonstrate Tennessee's cultural and political heritage, including Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. De Tocqueville actually visited Nashville when he was touring the United States in 1831 and 1832 before he wrote that tremendous work in 1835. We also have the Aiken Bible, which is the only Bible that Congress has ever authorized the printing of in 1782. And then we have a number of texts from former Tennesseans who won Pulitzer Prizes in both fiction and nonfiction. We also, of course, have Andrew Jackson represented on the list by John Meacham's Pulitzer-winning biography called American Lion, and also the University of Tennessee's collection of Jackson's writings, which now composes 12 volumes. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm ready for questions.
Do we have any questions for Representative Bolso? Representative Powers?
Yes, thank you. I noticed one book that was not on here. It's called Little Kate, World Traveler by Dennis and Tracy Powers. Would you consider an amendment to add that?
Yes, we sure would. We'd be delighted to.
Question's been called. We're ready to vote on the bill. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please signify by saying no. The ayes have it, and your bill moves on to full committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee.
You're most welcome. I'd also like to mention that item number 1, which is House Bill 2090 by Chairman Hicks, has been rolled for 2 weeks. And item number 6, which is House Bill 1554 by Representative Slatter, has been rolled for 2 weeks. Okay, that brings us to item number 2, which is House Bill 1791 by Chairman Hawk. Do I have a motion and a second? We do. There is no amendments filed, so Chairman, you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. As I saw the young man that just walked out the door, this bill is older than he is. This bill is now celebrating its 9th birthday, and we have brought this up quite some time. He is, Speaker Johnson has celebrated with me the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations. And ladies and gentlemen, this bill is commonly known as the September session bill. And the genesis of the legislation comes from a 2015 Supreme Court decision that Tennessee and many Tennesseans were frustrated about. And many Tennesseans came to their legislature and said, by gosh, y'all need to do something about this Supreme Court decision. And we hem-hawed around for a little while 9 years ago. And do we come back into special session? Do we not come back into session? What do we do about this? And the decision was no special session. So we waited till January. The mood had already died down and no action was taken. There was a bill filed to address the concern from a Supreme Court decision. And I'm happy to go down the line of what that was at the time, but it was the Obergefell decision back in 2015. And we didn't get anything done on a particular piece of legislation. So I introduced in 2016 a bill that would bring us back in odd number years. So we meet in the General Assembly traditionally now, January through April in an odd number year. Then we meet in the even number year again, January through April. This adds an additional September session in the odd number year. So what we would have done if it was in play this year, or this General Assembly, we had our traditional 2023 legislative session, January through the end of April. We would come back in a special September session on the Tuesday following Labor Day. If there were bills and issues to address, which this year there were, and we called a special session in August anyway, we would have waited until September to address those bills in just a traditional September session, not feel rushed, not feel any type of burden upon us to get in and get out at any particular time. We would meet in September, the Tuesday following, and meet as long as the month of September lasted. So if it was an issue that was more than 2 or 3 weeks in duration, it probably needs to wait until the following January, which is when we would come back for where we are right now, the 2024 year of the General Assembly. Every 2 years, Tennessee is allowed 90 days of legislative time in the chamber. The time that I've brought this bill to us, the last 9 years, we have averaged around 60 days in the chamber. So we have money built in the budget to do that, although it does show a fiscal note. Really, the fiscal note only indicates the monies that it would cost out of the budget that we currently have to go toward our General Assembly meetings. I'm happy to go into whatever detail that we've got, whatever questions and detail the committee would like to go into, but I would appreciate to move the bill forward, to continue the discussion, so Finance Committee can eventually kill the bill. But if we can move this forward. One last comment, and thank you for your indulgence, ladies and gentlemen. When we run as a citizen legislature to serve down here, we leave our lives back home, and we leave our businesses back home, and leave our families back home. And the expectation is we're going to be down here the first 4 months of the year, and then the next year, 4 months out of the first part of the next year. Some of us had fiscal review, some of us have general GovOps and other committees that would come down, but we know those throughout the time. Many of you, since you've been here, all you've known are special sessions. So let's put it on the books, on the calendar, that we're going to meet this particular time consistently so you can plan your lives and be that citizen legislature we say that we are. Appreciate any questions, comments, and hope to have a favorable vote, Madam Chair and members.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Chairman Keesley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, but again, this is not going to prevent it can't prevent constitutionally the governor calling a special session, though.
You're recognized.
Is that correct?
That is correct, Chairman. It will not overtake anything, we can still call the special session or action of the General Assembly. Both bodies can still call special sessions themselves. So it does not stop any other action that is constitutionally allowed. And I will address, since the question popped up, there is a question, why don't we do this, or why don't we schedule this every year? To do it in the even number year, we would have to have a constitutional amendment. So we would have to change the Constitution to be able to meet during the even number year. And this legislation goes back so far. Attorney Doug Himes and I crafted this bill 9 years ago, and I'd have to go back and see exactly the rational basis for that. But we would have to change the Constitution to do it every year, but not to do it in the odd year as laid forth in these provisions.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Chair Lady.
Thank you.
Representative Alexander.
Thank you. And thank you, Chairman, for bringing this. To going along with what Chairman Kiesling has asked you, but if we are in September, or we have this, we pass this bill and we can do that, can we, if the governor so desires, can we call the special session during that time frame?
Recognized.
Yes, thank you very much. And great question. And the answer is yes. There have been numerous occasions in my length of service that we have gone into a special session with a specific call during our traditional session we're having now. I'll go back to the Bredesen years. The first year of the General Assembly, we meet in the second Tuesday in January. Governor Bredesen called a special session for that week of session specifically to deal with TennCare. So we spent that whole week dedicated to nothing but TennCare issues. So if we come in, when we would come in during September, and a particular issue of importance were to come about at that time, then a special session could be called during that time with the limit and parameters only on that. So I'll use healthcare as an example, the TennCare special session. We come in on the Tuesday following Labor Day for a September session. The wheels fall off and we come back and we're still in September session. The wheels fall off. A special session can be called the next week or even during that week while we were here. So long answer to say yes, a special session could still be called within the parameters of September.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have a question from Representative Dixie.
I don't know if it's a question or a suggestion or just a statement. You mentioned, and I kind of felt left out a little bit when you said this, but you said, a lot of us leave people back home. Where I live here. And, when you live here, we don't get to get away from work or family or just the everyday things that we have to do because we live in the city or our constituents. We always still have to deal with constituent services because we never get away. We're always here. Yes, we do get to sleep in our own bed at night, and I appreciate that. But as far as this bill, I think there's two things that I would like to look at, and maybe you could consider and adding to that, because this would add another one more month to on the odd years. Am I correct on that? Saying that in September, how long would that session be? I'm sorry, because I came in late, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. And it would differ. It's the Tuesday following Labor Day. So depending on when Labor Day fell during that month, you would come in. If there were work to do, and there's parameters set forth that mid-August, you must put a bill or a concept before the legislative body. There's a limit of 99 bills. So issues would have to be vetted in August to see if it actually warranted to come in for a full-blown September session. So it could be as few as one day we come in, recognize a quorum. Maybe there's something to do, maybe there's not. If not, we'll hear a budget presentation where the budget year has just closed. Or it could go until the end of September. So hypothetically, you could go as few as one day, or you could go as many as 3 weeks.
All right, well, I'm about to say something may be a little controversial, but I think this is something we need to talk about. Some people have jobs, right? And we have to get back and we have to do some things and we have to take off time to be here. And luckily, some of us who do have jobs have employers that allow us to be here. And sometimes I think that there's two things that we should maybe look at, especially for us, the ones that here in Davidson County, at least the per diem, we should get the per diem rate that everybody else gets. Because again, we still have constituent services that we have to take care of. We still have our family and we still have our jobs and we still have stuff that we have to do. Second thing is that if we're going to keep extending the session, man, people have jobs and they're hard to take away from, maybe we should think about a salary that's tied to some sort of index or some sort of median income of Tennesseans in order to make it fair, so people who aren't independently wealthy or retired or come from a wealthy family or somebody that's paying their bills and their way of life can serve in the legislature, so we don't have just a homogenous group that serves here.
You're recognized.
And before you came in, Representative Dixie, I was actually addressing that, and you helped make my point for me. As citizen legislators, we need to know what that schedule is going to be so we can plan our work schedule around it, living here or living 4 hours away. When we call the special sessions, you've got to get out of work to do that. And it seems like we are governing more recently by special session.
Mhm.
I think we've had, and I'm spitballing here, we've had half a dozen special sessions in the last 4 years. So you've got to prepare yourself for work for that, and it may come up in a few weeks' notice. What we're doing with the September session, we're allowing you as a candidate and as a citizen to understand and know, all right, when I put my name on the ballot, I'm going to be there for the first year of the General Assembly. And again, typical the last several years, the last decade, January through April, that odd year, potential the month of September, that you can book that and plan accordingly as a candidate for office, understand that. And then again, in the following even number year, January through April. So you've got an expectation as a citizen legislator when I'm going to be there when you run for office, and you can inform your employer of that. And I'll share comments. I don't think you would mind me saying, Representative Miller and myself, we've been talking about the compensation aspect of that, of service for many, many, many years. And that's something I'm always welcome to have a conversation with, not germane to this legislation, but I've always welcomed conversations about that.
Thank you.
Representative Powell.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if we could just go out of session for a moment. I want to ask our lawyer about a constitutional question regarding this bill.
Sure. We're going to go out of session.
And my question is, when he was talking about we had to do it every other year because of the Constitution, why would, if we don't go over the number of days that were actually allowed in the Constitution, why would we not be allowed to, I mean, if he was doing this bill, could he not amend it to do it every September as long as we didn't exceed the number of days that were actually, and that we were allowed to in Constitution?
Thank you, Matt Mundy from Legal. I was just looking at that because as many times as I've heard this bill since I've been here about 10 years, I actually don't remember the rationale that Doug Himes articulated back when he was the director as well. So I'll try to find that answer for you before we finish it.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Do you have any comments for legal?
I could comment just to dovetail on that. I don't recall the rational basis behind that as well, but I do know that conversation was the 90 days that we've got available, and we've got plenty of days that we could use for a September session. I thought I had an idea and wrapping around in my head there, but I can't exactly recall the rational basis. But there's something that did preclude the annual situation there, and I'll try to find that answer for you too, Representative Powers, Chairman Powers.
You have another question for legal?
Okay, yeah, no, just
Okay.
for the sponsor. And going back on that, I was just thinking about.
We probably, unless we have do we have any more questions for legal? Can we just go back into
Sure,
session?
yes, I'm sorry.
We're back in session.
I was just thinking about when you were talking about that, about an issue coming up, if one actually came up after we left, in a year, an even year, we weren't able to address it till the following January, then, it would be kind of it looks like we'd be able to address it each year, maybe just a few days or whatever, in case something
recognize.
like that came up.
And thank you, Chairman Powers. And exactly. And the reason I chose January, the reason I chose September was for the possibility of it going forward to the even number year. Choose September because in the even year, you have elections in August and then again in November. So it could potentially be a lame duck session for a handful of members in September. But I chose September specifically for it possibly to go forward to an even number year. It would fall in a time when there's not an election. It is just after one election, and it's far enough in front of the November election that it wouldn't affect other things. I will mention this to this committee. I've become a fan of history, and actually this year, the second year of a Tennessee General Assembly is, in the scheme of things, is fairly new in our 200 plus year history. The second year of our General Assembly is only 50 years old. So I remember discussions. I don't remember discussions, but there were discussions in the late 60s that said, all right, we're going to start a second year of the General Assembly. Tennessee used to have just the early year, the odd year General Assembly, and then they would meet in a potential special session or something during the even number year. So the second year of the General Assembly that we are now in is roughly 50 years old. So it's not as old as people may think it is. Thank you for that.
Do we have any more questions? Question's been called and we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it, and you move on to full committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're on
This
your
has
way
been a
to-
great day, and I hope I can pass it before it learns how to drive. Thank
Okay.
you.
That brings us to item number 3, which is House Bill 1613 by Representative Powell. Do we have a motion and a second on this bill? Do we have a second? Second? We have a second.
Correct.
Okay. There are no amendments filed, so Representative, you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, Speaker Johnson, appreciate you recognize my daughter. She's a 7th grader at MLK Magnet here in Nashville. So appreciate her coming up here. I thought maybe if I brought her, I might be able to have a better chance of passing this. Since Representative Whitson couldn't join me up here today, I brought her as pinch hitting. So this bill would create the first holiday song. There are a lot of different songs that are state songs, but this would be the first holiday song in the state of Tennessee. And it's Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree by Brenda Lee, very famous, well-known Tennessean. And really this last November 2023, she topped the Billboard 100 chart for the first time ever, 65 years after the song's debut, and was on the top spot for 3 weeks. I know we got some history buffs here, but by hitting the #1 spot, she broke several records, many of which were held by Mariah Carey and her All I Want for Christmas, whom Lee beat out for the top. She claims just the third holiday #1 on the top 100. It was also her third #1 song, and she now holds the record for the longest gap between an artist's first and most recent week at #1 on the Hot 100, as her first #1 was her single I'm So Sorry in 1960. She now holds the record for the longest climb to the top of the top 100, as this song was actually written and released 65 years ago when Brenda Lee was just 13 years old. So 65 years between the time it was released and the time it reached #1. So it's a great honor. It's a tremendous song, brings a lot of joy to Tennesseans. It was written and recorded right here in the state of Tennessee. And very proud of Miss Lee and her accomplishments, and think this is fitting to make it the official holiday song of the state of Tennessee.
Well, do we have any questions? Yes, Chairman Kiesling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to ask, is Brenda one of your constituents?
So she has been. She was a longtime constituent. She still owns property in my district. She's actually now technically lives for voting purposes in West Nashville.
Oh, okay.
But she's still here in Nashville. And I know Representative Winston noticed she's also owns a farm in Williamson County. But she's been a long time. She grew up. Representative Winston, as you know, grew up here in Nashville, and she actually lived in his neighborhood. So that's why I wanted to make sure that he was a co-sponsor with
Wow,
me.
it's just curious. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, I like this bill, but now about the only way that I think, Representative Powell, that I could vote for this is to have your daughter come up to the mic and possibly sing this song for us.
I don't
No,
think
I'm
that's
just
gonna
kidding.
happen.
I'm
I can
just
tell by the
kidding.
look on
Just
her
kidding.
face, that is not gonna happen.
So she is in chorus, but I don't know if she knows all the words. So an interesting side note here in history. So actually, the house that I live in, Brenda Lee and her husband are actually built, and she lived there for a while. So he was a contractor and built the house. She stayed in a house in Woodbine for a much longer period of time. But people have told us about different parties she used to have where they were truly rocking around the Christmas tree. And my daughter's bedroom is now actually Brenda Lee's old master bedroom. So
Wow. Okay.
there you go. So I'm glad to have her up here today for that. But it's a very iconic song, and we're proud that it reached #1, and we beat Mariah Carey.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Powell. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Question's been called, so we're ready to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed signify by saying no. The ayes have it, and you move on to full committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members.
We're going to take another one out of order. This would be, I think, item number 7, which is House Bill 1695 by Representative Alexander. Do we have a motion and a second on this bill? We have a motion and a second. I believe there's an amendment filed on your bill.
That is correct.
Drafting code 013326. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do we have a motion and a second on this amendment? The amendment does make the bill, so let's go ahead and put this amendment on the bill. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying no. The amendment is on the bill. The ayes have it. Okay. You're recognized to
Thank you,
explain your
Chair
bill.
Lady, and thank you, committee. This bill was the same bill that we brought to you last year, or last year in special session, I should say. We did pass it all the way through the House floor, but the Senate did not choose to take up a bill, and I'm just repeating it, with the exception that the amendment includes DCS's amendment, which is the amendment that would also make sure that the word federal was in there in case they get called into a federal case and they need to have access to those autopsy reports.
Do we have any,
Would you like me to explain the bill a little bit better?
do you have
The-
any questions? Or would you like the bill explained? You want to go?
Okay.
Go ahead. and
Yeah,
explain your bill.
basically, what the bill does is that it allows us to protect the autopsy reports of minors up until they're 18, so that they're not in the general public viewing. We have the ability to protect our children while they're alive. We lose that when they're dead. And for these moms at Covenant, which is where this bill came from, the phone calls they were getting asking to have their child's autopsy report out in the public was horrendous, and it was a nightmare for them. So that's why we decided that minors need to be protected even in death.
We do have someone here that would like to speak on this bill. So without objection, we're going to go out of session to hear from Ms. Deborah Fisher. You have a 3-minute time limit. And please state your name and your who you're with for the record.
Okay.
I'm Deborah Fisher, and I'm Executive Director of Tennessee Coalition for Open Government. And this bill seeks to close information about crime victims. What it really does is close information about crime. The state does not conduct autopsies with the purpose of prying into personal information about a victim. They are required by state law when a person is killed by another person or the death is suspicious. Autopsies have been public record since the beginning. They're public in almost every state. And I want to be clear, the only thing public in an autopsy report is the information. The photos of the deceased, any images are already confidential by state law. And there is a difference between pictures and the factual information about the death. The information in an autopsy report is important in determining how a person died and also sometimes who the killer was. The bill assumes that police and prosecutors always get it right, but every couple of years, a story emerges in which a local journalist may be working with an extended family member, not always the parent, has used an autopsy to shine light on both mistakes and attempted cover-ups of what killed someone. In Memphis, Mark Paraskia used an autopsy to reveal that the Memphis Police Department SWAT team shot a 7-year-old through the head during a botched aid at a public housing complex. Police tried to cover that up. In Columbia, News Channel 5's Phil Williams used an autopsy report to get a case opened back up again. This resulted in the mother's boyfriend being convicted in a toddler's death. Would that mother have consented for the autopsy to be released? What about a child who's a ward of the state in DCS care? Would DCS consent if a child was killed under their watch? The bill offers a very narrow path to look at an autopsy with parental consent or through a court. But these don't work in most situations. First, the bill assumes the parent is alive and didn't die when the minor died. The bill also assumes that if the parents are alive, they can be found. What if the grandmother or an aunt was raising the child because the parents have disappeared, they're on the streets or whatever, and the grandmother doesn't have legal guardianship because the parent won't sign the paperwork? We tell this grandmother to go to court, hire a lawyer for thousands of dollars. Even if they found a journalist or someone to help them, how could they show good cause when they don't even know what is in the autopsy to prove good cause? I know that there is a desire to ease the grief of the parents of the covenant children. I know that. And the thing is those autopsies have already been released under public law. And nothing changes anything for them. In fact, the bill deals with autopsies in the future. It won't protect children, but it may have a very horrible unintended consequence of protecting their killers.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for being
Thank you.
here. We'll go back into session. Do we have any questions for Representative Alexander? If not,
I just
okay, go
wanted
ahead.
to make a last statement, just that we have the ability to get that information for any investigation being done. It's through the courts and through the parents, through DCS. Anything that they need is available to them to do the correct investigation.
Thank you. I think we're ready to vote now. Call for question. Oh, do you have a question, Representative Dixon? Question's been called, but
Okay.
you can go ahead and ask your question.
Representative Alexander, we talked about this,
Yes.
and
And I came to your office today.
yeah,
to see
no
you.
question. I
Right there.
had a wild goose chase today.
Yeah.
So my question was, so that everyone will understand, is so my question is, what happens to, like, sometimes they don't have a familiar relationship, so it may not be a guardian type relationship. Sometimes, let's say my brother or cousin or something is on drugs, but I've taken this kid to raise. I don't have that guardianship, but would I still be able to have those same type of rights?
And the answer was that you would just go back through the courts just like everybody else would.
When you say everybody else,
If if you want to release the autopsy, I mean, you would go to court to get the autopsy released so that you could observe it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, question's been called for and we're ready to vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please signify by saying no. The ayes have it and your bill moves on to full committee. Thank you. That brings us back to item number 4. And I think Chairman Haston is in another committee right now and probably can't make it. So we'll just take a brief recess. We're back in session and Representative Halson is not going to be able to be, Haston is not going to be with us today. So we're going to roll this bill for 1 week. And that's House Bill 2006, rolled 1 week. And now, since we have concluded our business, we have a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.